lecture is actually recording, and at the same time I want to upload the lecture from the other class, so this way when we are about to run out of space, hopefully I can reclaim that space by deleting that file. So we want to upload this one. Which is kind of bad because it put extra strain on the flash drive that's slow to begin with. Hello. I'm not dozing off, by the way. The computer is. Because it may seem that I'm dozing off or spacing out, but no, I'm not. I'm just waiting for the computer to wake up. It's like, come on. Probably a good time to upgrade my thumb drive. Okay, publish. There we go. Okay, so now we can move on to the actual app. So we want to import from the computer. Go to my downloads folder. All right, so I'm just going to describe the solution. Okay, so the solution is to send both numbers, x and y, using a list to the two different screens. So that part we know already because we have done that already in the past. But the real trick is when you handle the event of other screen closed, then you have to look at which screen closed and use that to help determine what to display when you print the dialog box. Okay, so now we are here. It's updating, so we can see it's still updating. We'll give it a moment.
Imagine they just changed the icon to that.
Yep, the flash drive is being very, very busy right now because I'm recording. I'm uploading my previous class recording at the same time. So that's why it's going to be really slow. Because otherwise I won't have enough space for this class, for the entire class period.
What's your other drive? Is it USB 3 or something?
Yeah, the other one is a solid state drive, USB 3.0, so it's screaming fast compared to this one.
And this is USB 2?
This is USB 2.0, but it's not USB 2.0 itself being slow. If I had an external hard drive, USB 2.0, it would be like zippy. It's because of the thumb drive being slow.
Oh, the actual memory is?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, the actual memory itself is being slow.
Are they still measured like class 10, class 4, and all that?
Oh, this is not it's not an SD card, so I guess they may not use the same classification.
Okay.
And even the classes won't help in this case. Cannot load project, try again. Okay, fine. Go back to my projects. Q1. Yeah, it won't help in this case. Maybe, maybe not, because those are in burst mode. So when you're using a camera, then you're in burst mode. When you're writing to exactly the same file, you go like that. But in this case, there's a whole bunch of read and write operations interleaved, because I'm recording, which is a write operation to the drive, but I'm also uploading, which is a read operation from the perspective of the drive. So I'm thinking that might actually, lower the speed, overall speed, because it breaks up the pipelining. Okay, so here's the screen. Okay, finally we get to it. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is to find out the names of the other two screens. One is screen diff, and the other one is screen mode. And when we get back to the code, the first thing we also need to do is to find out whether those numbers are actual numbers or not. So when we go to the blocks, once everything is loaded, it's going to be faster because once it's cached in memory, it's going to be faster. Okay, so what we need to do is to figure out a procedure first. I personally would use a procedure. You do not need to use a procedure. Okay, so this procedure is really just to check numbers. Okay, in other words, I just want to see if the text in text box X and text box Y are actual numbers or not. Okay. So we'll just go ahead and use a conditional statement to check that, okay? And inside math, there's a way to check whether a number is a number or not. So you just say is number, and we'll need two of these because we need to check X and we also need to check Y. Okay. I just clicked something and it's thinking about how to do it. There we go. Okay, so we want to replicate this block, and then we have to use a connection, which is a logical AND, to connect whether the first text box has a number and the second text box has a number. Then we just plug in the text of each text box so that we can check whether those are numbers or not. So duplicate, put the other one over here, and then change the second one to text box Y. There we go. So if they're both if they're both numbers, I don't have a problem. It's only when they're not numbers that we have a problem. So we go to logic, take out the negation, so that we check for the case when they're not both numbers. And then we just use the notifier to print out the message. So we go to show message dialog and compose the message here. And I think I asked for a particular text, so let's check that. Well, you may you can use exactly the same wording or not. It doesn't matter. But I'm just lazy, so instead of typing, I am going to be pasting. Proceed. There we go. Okay. So I use one single procedure because I know I need this both in when the multiplication button is clicked and also when the division button is clicked. So I group all of that code into one single procedure so I don't have to replicate it. You don't have to do it this way. You can just kind of duplicate the block, put it somewhere else. That's fine. Okay, so now we can actually do the calculation. So we have the division first, okay, because it's a little bit more complicated. I want to do this one first. The first thing I want to do is to check whether it is a number or not, okay. Now that means, I really need to know the result of check numbers because I need to know whether to proceed or not, okay. So in addition to printing the error message, I also need this procedure to tell me are those text boxes filled with numbers. If not, I'm not even bothered. I won't even bother to do the calculations. So that means this is not the right kind of procedure to use. I have to use the one that returns a result, or it's better to use the one that returns a result. And when I do that, I also have to change the conditional statement so that I can use one that actually returns a result. So I go to control, and I look at this one here and go like, that looks like something that I can use. So I can pick this one, just put it here, do this over here. It will complain, but we can later on delete this one, so that's going to be okay. This one doesn't fit here because it is a operation that does not specify a result, but that's okay. There are ways to convert it. We can just go to do result here and just say that do this and then give me a result. So when we have a problem, I want to return a value of false, okay? And if everything is good, I want to return a value of true. And now we have no use for the other subroutine anymore. So we just get rid of this one, and we stick with this one, change the name back to just check numbers. Or it's much better to change the procedure in this case to indicate that it does tell me whether those are numbers or not, okay? So you can make it very short, you can make it very long, but in either case, it is helpful for the procedure name to reflect what it actually does, okay? So we can check, we can say text boxes have numbers, okay? Or if you really prefer complete sentences, you can say do text boxes have numbers. Okay, because that is very clear, okay? Because if you just say text boxes have numbers, it may still be confusing. When is it going to return the true? When is it going to return the false? But when the question is, do text boxes have numbers, then it is pretty clear that the true indicates that yes, they do have numbers, and if the result is false, that means they do not have numbers. Okay? All right. So now that we have this, we can move on to back to the event handler, which I thought I started off somewhere, maybe not. Okay, so we will deal with the division one first. Yes, I do. Oh, it's right over here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to see whether those are actual numbers or not, and then we want to see if y is 0 or not too. Okay, so we'll go to the control, specify a conditional statement. Okay, and then what we need to do is to call the procedure. Just say, okay, let's proceed to do something only if the text boxes already have numbers. So now I can use the then portion to check again and say, do we have y being a non-zero number? So we need a second conditional statement here to check the value of y. So then we can say, use a math compare. Now this part is also important. If you use a text compare, it will not work in some cases. Okay? So let's just say that you use a text compare for equality instead of a math compare for equality. If you use a text compare to compare against 0, and I enter 0, 0, then it's not going to match. So you have to use a math compare. In other words, it will first convert the text into a numerical value, then it will compare the numerical value to numerical 0. Okay, now this part is kind of important because it depends on what kind of programming language you're used to. If you're used to C and C++, there's no issue like this, okay? Because the compiler will enforce the fact that you have numbers versus numbers or text versus text. But when you're dealing with scripting languages, which this resembles, then it will do the conversion automatically. Then you have to worry about, okay, am I comparing text or am I comparing numerical value? So in this case, it is important to compare a numerical value, and on the other side, we can just specify the text here because it will automatically convert it into a numerical value first before we actually do the comparison. Okay, so if it is 0, then we'll complain, otherwise we'll proceed. So to complain, we just duplicate this block here, and this time we'll just say that y cannot be 0. Y cannot be 0 in the division. Otherwise, we proceed. Okay, and to proceed means that we start the screen called screen div with a list of 2 numbers as the values to pass on to that screen. So we go to control, we specify others, open another screen with start value. Okay, this is what we need. I'm just checking here. Oh, okay. Good thing I checked. My other account is not quote-unquote verified, which means I can only upload like up to 20 minutes, I think. With this one, I can upload up to 4 hours, I think. One clip can be up to 4 hours. And upload. Same thing.
That's the wrong one, I think.
Ah! That's the one that's being recorded. Now we have to wait until it changes to that screen. And I can't switch to the other tabs either because it's busy. I'll need to sit down today. Normally I don't. Okay, so if I switch back, it should be uploading, so I can interrupt the process. Of course, switching back is going to be slow as well. I just clicked. There we go. All right, so let's, well, might as well. Add more video. There we go. Open. I think that's all I need. And let's switch back to here. Everything in slow motion. There we go. Okay. All right, so now we can specify the screen name. I just clicked. Okay. Didn't register the first time. There we go. The screen name is screen div with an uppercase S. And then the start value is going to be a list of the two numbers. So we're going to make a list of the two numbers. The first one being X. Now you can send the text, in reverse. You just have to remember which one is the dividend and which one is the quotient. As long as your program is self-consistent, it's going to be okay. All right, so that's for division. Are there any questions about the event handler for clicking divide? Any questions about this block of code? No questions? This is all good? Okay. Now we can go ahead and replicate this so we can minimize the amount of clicking and dropping and stuff like that. So we can say that, okay, now we're dealing with the multiplication one. The only thing we have to do is to take out this conditional block here, because we can simplify the process. There's no need to check if one of the numbers is a 0 or not. Okay. And we also have to change so that we don't refer to screen div. Instead, this is screen mult, M-U-L-T. And there we go. So the multiplication button will first double check to make sure that we do have numbers in both text boxes. And if we do, it will go ahead and start up screen mode and pass the list of both values to that particular screen. So this is the straightforward part, okay? Other than the error checking part, we have done this already. So the tricky part is when we do have something coming back from the other screen, we have to differentiate where it's coming from. So we go to screen 1, and screen 1 only has a few event handlers. This is the one that we have to use in this case. And you have to start with a conditional statement because you have to decide which screen is coming back with the result. Now there are ways to make this look simpler. I'm not going to go for that, so I'm just going to use the most straightforward approach. So in this case, you have to compare other screen name with the name of the screens that we know. So we need a text compare in this case for equality, and we'll test whether other screen name is the same as screen div versus screen mode. So let's check for screen div first. Screen div, okay. If that is the case, then we can use a dialog box to show the result after the division. So we'll duplicate this block, just move it down here, slap it here. Get rid of this, it's not an error, instead it is a result. But remember, I want the result to be spelled in a certain way, so we want to go back here and specify the answer of division is. Okay, there we go. We get back here, and then the message can be just the result itself. If you want to make it fancy, it's not a problem. Okay, you can make it fancy if you want. All right, so that handles one case, and then we replicate the comparison to handle the other case. So instead of comparing the screen div, we compare the screen mode, and then show the result kind of about the same way, but we do have to change the title so that it reflects this is the answer of the multiplication. That's it. So as far as I know, this program should perform the way it is supposed to according to the question. Are there any questions about this particular question?
You need to go to other screens, right?
Sorry?
You need to go to
Oh,
other
yeah, I need to go to the
right?
other screen. Thank you. The actual computation. Thank you. Otherwise, this won't do a single thing, right? It will go to a blank screen and go like, okay. Good job. Okay. So in here, we just have to go to the initialization event handler and just say that, okay, when I start, I need to do the following. There's only one thing to do. You go to control, and then you say, let's close the screen right away, but with a result. The result in this case, because this is division, so the result is going to be the mathematical division of the two numbers. But the two numbers are in the list, so you will need to use a select from a list, selecting from the start value. So the start value is here, and the first one is just 1, index 1. In fact, this part you can just copy and paste code from your homework assignment. Okay, that's the first one, duplicate, and this is going to be the second one. Like that. So, are there any questions about what the screen actually is going to do? There's no need to display Homer Simpson with a thinking, symbol on his head or anything like that. No need to use timers. Okay, just return the result. Okay. Are there any questions about this part? Did anyone copy and paste code from your homework or from my project? This is easy enough, right? I mean, just the amount of time to dig up your own homework assignment and do all the backpacking stuff, it's going to take longer. Okay. So if there are no questions about this, we'll borrow this code and we'll just put this into the backpack, because the other screen has pretty much the same code. Just change the division into a multiplication. So we'll add this to the backpack, change to our multiplication screen, and specify the event handler. Go to the backpack, pick this out, and then change the division into a multiplication. Wrong place. There we go. That's okay. It just looks ugly. There we go. So now we have multiplication on this one, and that should work. Okay? Yep.
I had a problem with the is number, thinking it was an empty box.
Oh, if it's empty, it won't work?
That's where I think, but it's not a problem I had in my code.
Okay. So did you end up changing it to is empty first?
No, I ended up just turning it in.
Turning?
Just turning it in. I didn't go back and
Oh, okay.
edit because I figured
Okay.
the 75% was pretty close. So.
Yep. Well,
Just
if
like it.
its number doesn't work, then we'll
Check
just
against empty string, right?
we'll just say that it's a problem with App Inventor,
Okay.
because the name is number really should work even with an empty string.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but
Yeah.
it probably, however it's coded back end is not.
Right. Mhm.
Isn't the default property of the text box numbers only? So
Yes, but it can be blank.
Okay,
Or you
so
could
I just use empty.
decimals.
So
Yeah.
I didn't use numbers. I didn't
That will
use
work
is
too.
number.
Yeah, if you use empty, that should work
I use not
automatically.
empty.
Yeah.
On the other question,
Yeah, it is empty.
as soon as I put in a dot, it was
Mhm.
throwing an error. It was taking the dot and checking it before I had entered the rest of the decimal.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
With this?
No, on the timer project.
Oh, okay.
I wonder. This makes me wonder. If you're not using if you're not letting the user enter something, can we inject a non-number value into a text box by setting the text property of a text box to something other than a number?
I bet you
I
can.
bet you can.
I bet you can, but to test it, today is not practical because that would take like half an hour just to start up the virtual machine, because I don't even have it installed yet. So that may be a slight issue. So we'll just not test it today. Okay, but this work project is done. So
Can you go back to the first screen?
yes. You mean this part here, or do you want to check
Yeah.
it?
I had forgotten that there was one that you could ask it which other screen had closed. So I did mine a different way with another list and value depending on which screen it was.
Pass the value back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did. I passed the value back to the string.
You can pass it back too. That's another way to do it. But this is not the only way to do it. But this is the easiest way, because it always tells you which screen came back with that result. Okay. Any other questions? No questions. All right. Let's move on to the next question in the test. All right, so the next one in the test, I think it's the easier one, but some people say it's not, okay?
Took longer.
Took longer?
Yeah.
Maybe it's because, we haven't seen the question in class. The other one, we have seen it so many times already.
That one there was just there was a lot of error checking and stuff that had to be done on it to not have it introduce
Yeah, this
bugs.
one's a lot easier to break.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll read the question first, and then we'll figure out, what needs to be done in order to get full credit. So this is, in this project, you may add any number, I'm reading the second paragraph. You may add any number of any components as necessary. This app is designed to help students track time and progress in an exam. So this is how you use it. You enter the total number of minutes for the whatever exam you're taking, and then you enter the total number of questions of the same exam. So the purpose of this app is to tell you, are you on track or not, okay? At a certain time, you look up the app and go like, okay, I'm supposed to be on question number 20, but if you're falling behind, you're on question number 15, then you need to kind of speed up a little bit. If you're on question number 26, you know that you're already leading a little bit, you have enough time. So that kind of just gives you an idea of, okay, in a multiple choice exam particularly, are you making progress in order to finish the entire exam? So that's the purpose of this particular app. The only button of this app is a toggle, which means if the timer is stopped, clicking the button will start it. If the timer is already running, clicking it will pause it. Okay. Now I did not say that if you click it again, it will resume the counting. So if you did not, implement the resuming part, I'm not going to take any points off. Okay. But the intention is to pause, resume, pause, resume. Yep. Mm-hmm.
How many professors are going to let us use their cell phone during an exam?
If you're taking an online class,
Yeah,
how many
online
professors
class.
cannot allow a cell phone, right? So that really, okay, I know I'm digressing, but since the computer is super slow today, I might as well. But that really kind of cast cast some doubt on, the result of online classes. Okay, if people take an online class and the assessment is online as well, instead of saying, okay, you have to be here to take the test, it really kind of casts some doubt on, okay, what is the who's actually taking the exam, and answering those questions. And then on top of that, if you have exams that are supposed to be closed book,
Yeah. There's no way to guarantee that.
yeah, exactly. But I know people in psychology where they're supposed to have closed book exams, and people even go to Moodle. They flip onto different Moodle pages, and they get caught because Moodle keeps a log. So when you see the flipping of the actual content pages between the start and the end time of an exam, you know that person is doing something that person is not supposed to. But that can be easily defeated by, having somebody else logging in, on a different computer, and so this person can look at the other screen. You can take screenshots. You can print out everything prior to the exam, right?
Right.
So there's no actual way to enforce all of these things when an exam is fully online and nobody is proctoring.
Right.
It's okay for classes like Microsoft Word, Excel, and stuff like that, where it's a skill set kind of thing. Because when people cheat in those classes, guess who's there cheating? But it's not. I think it's really questionable when you're taking 300, 400 level classes and the exam is all online. That I have some questions about.
Yeah, it works okay for project-based courses where you're having to build something,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And also you're acquiring some skill that is going to be useful to you.
Right.
That means if people cheat, they're just cheating of themselves. They're not getting anything in return. Okay, so getting back to this one. Okay. Next to the label, remaining time in minutes is a label. Use this label to display the actual number of minutes remaining. Next to the label, target question number is another label. Use this to display the target question number, which means which question you should be on at that moment. Okay, I think some people may have done it in a reverse way, like how many more questions you have to answer. I'm not going to take points off if it is the other way around. You may assume these questions should take about the same amount of time to answer on the average. You will need to track the time in this app. Specifically, update the two labels described in the previous paragraph as necessary. Because the number of questions can be more than the number of minutes, you will need to update the labels more frequently than every minute. Note that the timer of a clock specifies the period in milliseconds, meaning that a number of 1,000 is a second. Assuming that you track the number of seconds past the starting point as seconds since start, then the target question number can be computed as seconds since start divided by second per question, where second per question is the result of dividing the total amount of time of the test in seconds by the total number of questions. So I'm giving you the equations, okay, to compute the basic numbers to deal with this one. When time runs out, stop counting and updating. Do not display negative numbers as time remaining, or display target question number that is more than the total number of questions. Okay, so I think I left out a lot of stuff that is reasonable assumptions for an app like this. Like, do not display minutes in a fraction or with decimal numbers. You have 20.65099 seconds, minutes left. Okay, what is that, right? So you can still do that, okay? So you don't have to do any conversion, you don't have to use the floor, you don't have to round up or round down and stuff like that. You can display just the number as it is, okay? For those of you, because it's not specified in the question, okay? I did not say, in whole minutes, okay? I just said in minutes, okay? You can say, oh, fraction of a minute is still a minute. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with this one. And see if I can get it done before the end of today's class. But I'm gonna blame it on the computer if I cannot. But then I have to blame myself for not remembering to bring the faster drive. All right, so let's import again. This time it's Q2. And I think the other one is done. Yep. So that means I should go back to here and delete that file. So this time I have to be careful of which one to delete. Okay, so 440 is the one to delete. Yep, double check. So now we have more space for this class.
JavaScript?
Sorry?
Was 440 JavaScript?
No, 440 is, this is cisp 440, so
Oh,
it's a discrete
That's the
structure.
C++.
No, it's discrete structure. It's more of a math class than anything else. Right. So I got it uploaded. I think it's just in the process of bringing it up. No, it's not. Oh, because it's already here. Okay, never mind. There we go. Okay, so this is your starting point. It has the text boxes. It has all of these things. I did not ask for error checking in this case. So if you don't do error checking, other than the ones that are described explicitly in the homework assignment, I'm not going to take any points off. But I do want to make the point of, I'm grading it this way only because you have a limited amount of time. So I cannot say, okay, do all applicable error checking. But when you're actually writing an app and you plan to release the app, then you really should do all the applicable error checking. Okay? All right, so let's start with this one. And the first thing we need to check is whether a clock is already here. It's not, but since you can add any number of components you want in here, you just go to sensors, drag and drop a clock so that we have a basic mechanism of maintaining time. Okay? All right, so now that we have that here, we can turn off the features of the timer. Always fires does not really apply to this particular app because always fires only makes a difference when you have a multi-screen application. If you have a multi-screen application and you start another screen so that the other screen is on top of this one, if you have timer always fires unchecked, then the timer will stop clicking.
When you move to the other screen.
When the other screen is covering this one.
Okay.
On the other hand, if you check timer always fires, then even when the other screen is on top of this one, this particular timer will still take. So that's the only difference. It makes no difference whatsoever in this case because you only have one screen. So you won't have another screen overlapping with this one. As a result, the timer is always going to fire. So it makes no difference whatsoever. Timer enabled, I'm going to turn it off because until someone clicks the button, there's no need to start the timer. Yep.
If you come back to the original screen, does the timer start firing automatically again?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's the idea. Yeah, I haven't tested that.
Right, that's what it's supposed to be.
Okay, all right, so let's go to the blocks and actually do some coding. All right, so with this one, I'm going to start with the initialize because the initialize actually doesn't have much to do. It's only when you click on a button, then you have to do some computations, and then those will also be useful. So we go to the button, there's only one, and say when the button is clicked, we have to do the following. The first thing we need to check is, am I stopping, pausing, or am I resuming, or am I starting? Okay, so there are a few things I need to check here. And to differentiate all of those cases, it also means that I have to be able to check whether I should be resuming or whether I should be starting the countdown. And to do that, I will need some global variables. Okay, I will need some global variables, anyway. I have one global variable to keep track of how much time is remaining in the test. Okay, so I will say remaining time in seconds. And I'm going to initialize it to a particular value so that I can see that the timer or the whole counting has not started yet. So I'm going to put a 0 here as a special value. And that's what I need to check when I click the button. The first thing I need to do is to check and see if remaining time in seconds is 0 or not. I'm going to bring an else case here because the else case is also important. Okay, so if it is 0, that can mean one of two things. One is I haven't started anything yet, or we have it has just reached 0. But in either case, there's nothing to do other than starting it. Okay, so when I click the button and the number of remaining time is 0, then I should start the whole thing. Now to start the whole thing means that I have to compute the two numbers that I was mentioning earlier. Do you guys remember which two numbers I need to compute? Okay. Seconds per question. How many seconds do I need per question? Now, this is only a suggestion. If you want to track the number of milliseconds per second, hey, that's fine too, okay? In fact, it is more handy that way as well, okay? There's a reason why you might want to track in milliseconds, but not in seconds, okay? But we'll say that this is initialized to 0. I need this to be a global variable because it is also used in the timer event handler. And in order to share something between event handlers, it has to be a global variable. Another one that I need to use, another global variable that I need to use is how much time is remaining. And that's already here, so I'm good with that one. I also need to track how many questions are remaining. But I can do one of two things. Okay, I can either track how many questions are remaining, or what is the current question number, or I can track the total number of questions and use a ratio to deal with that. Okay, so there are several ways to do this. So I'm not too concerned about that. Let's get rid of this one first. All right. So in here, because remaining time in seconds is a 0, that means when the button is clicked, I'm supposed to start the entire countdown, thing, which also means I need to grab values from text box 1 and text box 2. But this time, since I did not ask you to check whether it is blank or not, okay, so you don't have to. If you did that, it's great, but if you did not, it's okay. So the first thing is I need to do some calculations, and I'm going to put some local variables here just so that it's easier to differentiate which number is which. So I'm going to write down, I may or may not need local variables. Let me think about this. Probably don't need it. Okay. All right. So we'll do the calculations. Look at how much time is remaining, and also how many seconds should I allocate per question. And there is a way to do this, so I don't even have to track which question I'm on at this point. Okay. There's a way to kind of do this without tracking that, because the label itself is a global variable. The text of the label is a global variable, so I can use that to track the current number. So let's see if I can do this with the minimal number of global variables. I do need to set the remaining time in seconds to what is specified in the text box. So we go to text box 1, grab its value, and put it here. Okay. So that part is not yet, because that one is specified in minutes. So I need to multiply that by 60 in order to get the number of seconds. So let's go do some calculation. Oops. There we go. So now we can calculate the remaining time in seconds. Second per question is something that is useful, so I will keep track of that too. That one is just remaining time in seconds, because right now I'm at the beginning of the entire test, so I need to divide it by the number of questions in the test. So we'll go ahead and take this one, do a division by number of questions, which is in text box 2. So I just grab the text of text box 2 as the divisor, and then we can now set the two global variables. Are there any questions about these two numbers or how they are calculated? So the first number tells me how many seconds is remaining in the test. So when I start it, okay, it is just whatever number is specified, or the value that is specified by the text box times 60, because we're tracking the number of seconds. And then the second one is the second per question. How many seconds should I allocate per question? And that really is just the division between how much time is remaining, which is currently the total amount of time, divided by the number of questions. Is that okay so far? Yes? No? Sort of? Okay? All right. So here's the trick, okay? So the trick to not require a global variable. Yep, go ahead.
Do that math. Can you just do one example with some numbers?
Sure. So let's say let's say the total amount of time is 10 minutes. Okay, so you have 600 seconds. And let's also say that you have 10 questions.
Okay.
So it becomes 600 divided by 10, which is 60.
But global remaining time in seconds is
600.
600, because you just said it. Okay.
Yeah.
600, and then
Divided by
so then
the
times-
number
okay,
of
I see what you're
questions.
saying. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So, but this is the trick here. The trick is to use the label itself, quote unquote, as a global variable. Okay.
Right.
So we
And
use.
this is the default. You're basically starting.
Yes.
These
This
never
is the.
get reset here because you only push the button once.
Right. Yeah. I'm assuming the end user has specified the values, and just click the button right now.
One time, otherwise you'll reset your global.
Yep. But that's why I check whether I'm already in a reset condition. Now, if you want to be safe, you can make this less than or equal to, just in case we count below,
Okay.
0. Okay. All right. So the next thing we do is to change the label. So we go to target question, and then we set the text of this label either to 1 or to 0, depending on how you want to look at it. Okay. So I would just go ahead and set it to 0. But since most people count from 1, we'll just make it 1. Okay, fine. There we go. And then there's one more thing, because the timer has to start. At this point, I have not specified the period of the timer, and I haven't started the timer yet. Okay, so the timer should be off at this time. So this is the other trick. I will make the timer to go off for every single question at the right time. I will just specify, okay, how much time do I need to space out between questions? So this way, every single time the timer fires, it is the time to update the number of the question number. Okay.
That's
Hmm?
good. That's good.
Well, that's one way to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, there are many ways to do it, but this is one way to do it. So I go to the clock and I go check out its period, and I say, okay, set the interval, which is in milliseconds. So this is where unit is important, because this is specified in milliseconds, and this one is specified in seconds. So we just take this number here, and then we say, let's do some multiplication by 1,000 in this case, because 1 second has 1,000 milliseconds. So we do this, multiply this by 1,000. There we go. So now the timer will automatically track. Every time it takes, it's time to update the number and change it by 1. Is that okay? Okay. And in order to find out when I'm supposed to stop, I also need to track how much time is remaining, because according to the question, oops, not this one, that's a 440 stuff. So according to the question, I also have to update how much time is remaining. And that one is the other label, which is how much time is remaining, label time left. So we have to change that one too. Oh, question number, I think that's the one that we have to update. I think I updated the wrong one. Let me look at the designer. Okay. Target question, time remaining. Yeah, question number is the one that I need to update. Time left is something I have to update as well. Okay. So we'll go ahead and change the blocks. I changed the wrong label, I think.
Okay, but if you're updating you're only gonna fire the clock at the interval.
Yep.
If the interval is greater than 1 minute, then your minute time's not gonna be. When are you gonna update that?
Ah, you're right.
Another, I set another timer for that.
Oh, you said a second timer.
Yeah.
Okay.
They tried, but then you said that we can add anything, so I just
You can use a second timer if you want to. That's a good
otherwise
question.
it could jump from 3 to 1 minute or something.
Right.
or it will
Unless it's
change
specified.
each second.
Okay, let me see if I can wiggle myself out of this
Yeah,
one.
that's the way I was doing it every second, except I didn't change the time except when the minute changed. I didn't change the label, I guess. But yeah.
Ah, okay, yes.
I use two times.
You use 2 timers as well.
To do what?
So that it will.
Change the
One to
labels.
display and
Two
one to
labels.
count
Well, there is a way to use only one timer to do it. It's just a little bit more
Completely.
cumbersome to do it.
Just use global variables and like have like one global variable count the number of lapsed seconds, and then you can just subtract things off. And actually, if you do that, then it's also really easy to change the display so that it doesn't just display minutes; it also displays like minutes and then the number of seconds, which is something I did to make it easier to actually use.
So yeah, my stopwatch timer is real simple. All it does is add 1 second.
Now you can do it with one timer pretty easily
and then
too.
all the rest of the programs is all on the display time timer, which is also on every second, but it does all the calculations.
I think I used the modulus to make sure that it was a time to
Like
decrement.
update method. You could also just like
You might
put
get
the update
20 different
call
solutions.
and like say on call update. You do all your update methods and then you just go and say.
Well, there are.
All your update
I think that like since you're basically doing the same thing each time, you can just make all of your updates a single function and like with a bunch of sub functions and just have one function that says update and do it each time your timer is called. I don't see why you need 2 timers because you can.
No, it's easier to have 2 timers.
I don't think so. It's overly
Well,
complicated.
You're right. I probably could have done it all in one timer. Yeah.
So it really did seem way
There are many ways to do this. Okay, because ultimately it's an equation thing. Okay, because if you know the total amount of time, the total number of questions, and the number of seconds since start, you have everything that you need to figure out the rest. Okay, so we'll go ahead and try that way. Okay, so seconds since the beginning, number of questions. Okay, so I'm changing the. I'm changing the layout of the program a little bit here. Okay.
So are you going to use 2 timers? Or?
Hmm?
Are you going to do 2 timers? Or?
I'm going to use one single timer.
One single timer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm still going to use the total amount of time being 0 as an indicator whether I'm starting from the beginning or whether I'm resuming from another one. So the total amount of time is in this text box. So that part is correct. The global number of questions. Okay, so this one is not from calculation anymore. This one is really just the text of text box 2. Okay, so we go to text box 2. Grab is text. I forgot about the part that I have to update every minute.
Every minute, yeah.
And then the second since start is initialized to 0, so that's all good. Okay, very good. Number of questions, the question number, the target question number is set to 1 is good. Start as a starting point. And time remaining needs to be updated too, so we need to update time left. Set the text to basically the difference between these two, and then divide the whole thing by 60. So we go to math, do a division. Because this tells me how much time I am given as a total, which will not change as I go through this program. And I have to subtract it by how much time is, well, you know, in this case it doesn't really matter because I don't need a subtraction because I haven't really moved anywhere yet. Okay, so I have to divide this number by 60, and that's how much minutes I have left.
The total amount of time left you're using as a constant.
Yes, this is going to be a constant, and then the other one, which is number of questions, is also going to be a constant. So the only thing I'm going to change is second since start, and then I'll use it to do all the calculations. So we'll stash it here, put this one here, and then divide it by 60 because we want to display the number of minutes. Okay, there we go. All right. So now the trick is, how do I know how to set the time interval? In other words, is the minute mark coming up first, or is it time to update the question number first? What do you think?
Either way, right?
That's why I use.
Well, I'm only going to use one timer. Okay, I'm going to use one timer. Now, the best way to cheat out of this one is to update everything every half a second. Because I cannot imagine a case where you are not given at least 1 second per question, right? So practically speaking, you can use that one and go like, okay, this is the easiest way to cheat out of this one. Well, I wouldn't say cheat, but it's the best way to answer the question if you don't mind, you know, chewing up the battery life.
Why 1/2 second instead of 1 second?
Sorry?
Why 1/2 second instead of 1 second?
Just to make sure.
Just to make sure.
Just to make sure. You can use 1/10 of a second if you want to.
I had mine on half a second at first, and then I was let's just do one. Smile
Yeah.
next time, both from one.
Okay, so but the key is to figure out which one is going to come up first. Okay, so what you need to do is to figure out, okay, based on the question number, when do I need to update? Okay, so you have that particular interval, right? And then you look at the minute mark and say, okay, what is the next time I need to update because I need to update this minute? Whichever one comes up first is how you want to set up the interval. So you just say, okay, wake me up at that time, okay? It may be because of the minute mark. It may be because of the question number. Just find the minimum.
Well, you're still going to set the interval. You're just going to decide
Yes.
which one. Okay.
Yep.
Mm.
So I may not be able to finish it here, so I can either continue this, you know, during the lap time, which I really don't want to do because you know, my setup is really slow today. I can do it without recording. That would go a lot faster. So we'll try to push a little bit more. I will just go ahead and specify what to do when the timer does click. Okay, so we go to the timer. Now when it does click, it has to know how much time is between the time. Oh, okay, that's going to be, well, it will require one more global variable. Because, okay, it doesn't need a new global variable because the clock actually knows what time it is. Okay? But since I haven't really taught in this class how to use the clock itself to track time as an instance, I cannot rely on that.
Yeah, I tried that route, but I couldn't do that.
You can. I mean, there's a way to do it. It's just not as easy. So we'll. Oh no, I'm going to initialize. Initialize.
Whatever.
Yep. Interval to whatever, we'll have the initialized interval here. So when the timer does click, yep.
Couldn't you just adjust everything by the timer interval? Because that's what I did. I just had a conversion constant that I set to the
Yes.
timer interval divided by 1,000 to kind of convert from the timer interval to seconds.
Yep, you can do that. So in here, you basically set second since start to second since start plus interval. So I have to keep track of the increase of time because interval can change depending on the time. So this may turn out to be a very long solution that's kind of convoluted.
Wait, what did you say? Why would the interval change?
Because the interval depends on what is going to come up first. So let's say this is the current time.
Oh, you mean the meaning of the interval will change?
Right, because
Okay.
you have a minute interval and then you have a question interval. So whatever comes up first is how I want to set up the timer interval.
Can you show us some numbers with both those cases?
Sure. So let's say the current time is, I just need to make sure that I'm not running
Are we done?
over time here. We're close to that, okay? So let's say the current time is 11:56, okay? And the current second is 23. There we go, okay? So now it depends on, the next minute mark is going to be 57, right? But it depends on whether 57 is here or whether 57 is here, because it depends on when I need to update the question
You're
number.
going to try and flop the interval for each?
Hmm?
Are you going to change the interval for each
Yes.
that you want to fire on?
Yeah, so every single time I need to specify exactly when I need to fire the timer and use that to determine when to click it. Now there's a reason why you might want to do it. I know it sounds kind of long, convoluted when we can just say, okay, let's just update every update it like 5 times per second. That would definitely catch everything, right? But what that would do is it's going to increase the battery usage. Because now you have a timer that's going off a lot more than what it needs to. And every single time it fires, it has to update a bunch of stuff on the screen. So if you set it up to fire every half second, then you end up using a lot of energy on your phone that you otherwise do not need to.
But is that energy because you're calling a procedure every time to check
Yes.
things? It's
Yep.
not because the clock is firing regardless, right?
Well, that's not entirely true either. Because there's only one timer, or there's only one hardware mechanism inside the computer that gives you that tick, 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 okay? If there's nothing to do, the CPU can actually, quote unquote, goes to sleep. So it can basically use very little amount of energy when there's nothing to do.
The circuitry of the timer is separate than the CPU.
Yes,
right?
the circuitry of the timer takes very little energy by comparison. So if you don't have anything to do, if you don't have any events to handle, if it's just the timer taking itself, the timer can take without using basically any energy. But on the other hand, if you do trigger the execution of the timer event handler, then you're talking about big time execution. So that's why even though this approach is longer, it looks convoluted when it doesn't seem to be necessary. Well, it's not necessary if you're running in a simulator. If you want to run it on an actual phone and you want to make sure that your battery can last longer, then this approach is better.
Or if you're doing this a million times in different places.
Right. When you're not talking about seconds, if you're talking about milliseconds, 20 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds, then you're talking about chewing up a lot of energy because of the extra computation.
Okay.
Yep. I have to stop now because the next class is going to come in, but let me hear that question. Yeah.
I guess I have a question about